Big L is making is we can laugh hard now, but we got a job to do. That's one way that we're like, okay, if this, we'll see what comes later. We'll see if he fulfills this promise. Yo, welcome to the 25th episode of the Resolution Podcast, where we just been breaking down storytelling tactics used in hip hop. I'm your host with the most, Alex Lacey. And this week we're going to be breaking down Big L in his song The Heist, which is a crazy story. And I want to break down I used the 5-sentence formula, which if you're not familiar with that is, it's basically, I talked about either 21st or 22nd episode, I talked about the ABS framework and but so. And I talked about an exercise that you can use at the end to basically have a foolproof way of telling a really engaging story. So the 5-sentence formula that I came up for this story is, I had just left the studio at 3 a.m. and I was about to get some food, but Corleone called saying that my wife was cheating on me. So we formulated a plan of attack to get revenge. And the moral of the story is just to not mess with Big L. So this is how he increases the problem and keeps our attention all throughout the song. So the problem that he has is his wife was cheating on him, and he was planning a revenge on her and the people that she was cheating on him with, which she was also with another friend of hers and 2 other guys. And they just got a room at the Holiday Inn, and that's what Corleone told Big L. So once they all squad up and they get together and they start formulating this plan, he gives a promise. He says, we can laugh hard later, but we got a job to do. So that I see is kind of interesting because you can also use that. So it's a promise, but you can also break promises in your storytelling. So a couple podcasts ago, I talked about Andre 3000 and his ingenious way of telling a tragic end about a girl that he was meeting up with, and how she grew up. When she wanted to grow up, she wanted to be alive, but then she ended up dying at the end of the story, which is super sad. So you could do the same thing here. You could make which the promise that she was making was that she was going to be alive when she grew up, but then she ended up dying at a very young age. So, but you can keep a promise. So the promise that Big L is making is, we can laugh hard now, but we got a job to do. That's one way that we're like, okay, if this, we'll see what comes later. We'll see if he fulfills this promise. And then also disbelief. After Corleone calls him and says, yo, your wife's cheating on you, they just booked a room at a Holiday Inn. He's like, are you sure? Like, I can't believe this would happen to me. He needs confirmation that this is his wife who's being disloyal to him. And then he's like, yeah, it's your wife. I just saw her. I knew it was her. And she was with 3 other people, 1 girl and then 2 other guys. And so Big L gets pissed. I mean, understandably. So he starts busting down the road as fast as he can. He says he's doing a buck and change, which is a buck is 100. So buck and change is over 100 miles an hour, just bobbing and weaving, like switching lanes. I think, he says a line about switching lanes, but I can't remember exactly what it was. And then the next one, so that there was the promise, the disbelief, aggression. And then this one, he talks about what's at stake here, which the more is at stake, the more tension we give to it. So, and a really good example of that is like the MCU. In Avengers Endgame, we saw the whole culmination of like 10 years of films going up against this one big bad Thanos. And it all came up and it was all showing what was at stake. They had already been defeated. It was basically the stake of the universe at that point. But for him, these dudes are messing up my reputation. So if he just lets them slide, his reputation is going to be ruined. So he has a motive, and he's showing what's at stake if they don't accomplish what they're trying to. And then there is the point of no return. And that's when he says, there's no time to back out now. We got to get this done. And then that's when they actually enter the hotel. Like, he holds the clerk hostage and be like, yo, where the hell are these people? Like, I just saw them party of 4 walk by. She says room 212. And so they run up and they have like handcuffs and duct tape with them, and they tie him up and they start slapping the dudes. And one of the guys that Big L is with is like, which is the next part, is referencing the backstory and saying, yo, I know these dudes, they were dealing drugs upstate. That's also when he knew, like, oh, this is another way I can get revenge. Instead of just like basically taking out my physical aggression on them, I can also steal all their money and defeat them in that sense as well. So having that backstory and giving your listeners context into maybe what a character was feeling or maybe what you were feeling, that's a really good way of drawing them in and allowing them to think, oh, yo, there's more to this than I first thought. Now I have even more context to what is going on. And the resolution, so that was all just like stacking the problem and just telling about the journey that he was going on. And then when he finally accomplished his goal, which was taking revenge, he popped all four, including his wife, and like he killed them all, which is like, in my mind, that's hella cold-blooded. I mean, it's not necessarily cold-blooded because he had a motive and like, I guess they messed up first, but that's, I don't know, to me, that's over the top. But he ended up stealing the drugs and the money of the guy that was, or the guys that were selling drugs upstate. And then they celebrated in the projects, and then they were laughing hard. So he ended up keeping that promise that he made to us in the beginning. But it also could have gone south and turned into a tragedy, which like he wouldn't have been able to fulfill that promise. So, and then the moral of the story is like, just don't mess with Big L. I believe he doesn't specifically say that in the song, but that's what I believe, that what he was trying to say in that song, that's what it was about. So a couple things that I think you really could use in your lyrical compositions and your songwriting is make promises. Say, yo, we're going to do this later. We're going to make sure this happens. And then you decide whether that does happen or not. Because if you don't, then it'll feel like a tragedy of like, oh man, that wasn't able to happen because of something really sad that happened. You could talk about what's at stake if you don't accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. If you don't, like, so a really common example is like, maybe if you're telling the story in third person, Big L doesn't really do this, but it's definitely a fictional story. Or I actually don't know if it's fictional. I hope it's fictional. But you could talk about, this person is doing this, and if I don't beat them, if I don't accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish, this is what's at stake. Like, for example, my family's not going to get fed, or my reputation is going to get dwindled, or I'm not going to have any food for the next month, or I won't be able to get this placement, or what, this, that, and the third, whatever it is. Having something at stake gives the audience a lot more emotional investment into the story that you're telling, because they're like, I need to see if he actually accomplishes this because there's so much at stake. And then also the backstory, just giving more context to the audience, kind of having your story and then giving it like a third, like a 3D view of like, oh, this is just more than just a story. So those are the three, I think, that stand out the most that I think you should really look into. So those are probably the three big takeaways. So that's all I have for this week. Thank you so much for watching. And remember to develop that problem as much as you can, so that resolution, when that hits, it's like a sigh of relief for your audience. And it just makes it so much more satisfying. So keep writing, keep working, keep hammering on your craft, and I will see you next week with another video. So peace.